Right, good afternoon everybody. It is now 2 o'clock. So welcome to this meeting of the East Cambs District Council Audit Committee. Particularly like to welcome those members of the public and press watching the live stream. As with all technology, there's always the possibility of something going wrong with the live stream. If that should happen, I will adjourn the meeting until the issue has been resolved. If we are unable to resolve the issue, it may be necessary to continue the rest of the meeting without a live stream. Brings us on to agenda item 1, public question time. Patrick? No public questions, thank you. Item 2, apologies and substitutions. Well, I see we've got a full house, so we can go on that. Declarations of interest. Does any members have any declarations of interest for any items on the agenda? No. In which case we move on to the minutes, which is to confirm as a correct record the minutes of the meeting of the Audit Committee held on the 20th of January 2026. Can I have a proposer and seconder, please?
Happy to propose, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Horgan. And a seconder?
Thank you, Chair. Second that proposal.
Thank you, Councillor Vellacott. Steve.
I have a minor correction and also a question. Top of page 8, or page 4 of the minutes, I should say. The discussion about the statement of accounts. On that third bullet point there, I don't think it's true that members thought it unnecessary to defer the statement of accounts. I think the committee accepted the timescale. My recollection was that members thought it was unnecessary to convene an additional audit committee meeting, which is the point that was under discussion. So I just thought I'd nitpick and highlight that.
I would agree with you on that.
And back to the first bullet point. So as of that day, there was still quite a lot of unresolved issues about the accounts, and the committee agreed to leave that with yourself and the Finance Director to resolve and then sign off. And I know the sign-off happened, which is great. But I'd be very interested to know what happened to get from A to B and what, if any, work was done to increase the amount of assurance available to you to sign off the accounts by the date.
Jude, would you like to comment on that?
Thank you, Chair. And we, as you know, that the auditors gave assurance for the investment and the cash and cash equivalents. That's the bulk of the amount on the balance sheet. In terms of debtors, creditors, we haven't done anything around that. However, we have conducted an internal audit for the full year, which we are awaiting a report from the internal audit. So that will cover the debtors and creditors side of it once we have the assurance. But before signing off, nothing has been, we have not done on debtors and creditors to confirm. So when also the fixed asset, it's been always been deferred because the opening balance issues. So that's still outstanding. So that's beyond our control because it's auditors cannot verify the opening balances. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Jude. Councillor Dupre.
Thank you. 2 questions then. The first arising from that exchange. Am I able to be provided with a list of what changed between the meeting that we had and the sign-off of the accounts? Is my first question.
Yes, happy to provide that change.
Thank you. And my second point is somewhat recursive, but I haven't got another way to do this. On minute 29, the minutes of the last meeting, the top of page 6 says members discussed the potential benefit of the committee adopting a minutes action log. The chair agreed to consider this.
Yeah,
now,
as I said at that meeting, I would take it up outside the meeting because clearly it's an idea across all committees. It's not just the audit committee, and I'm chasing that up.
Right. Well, that was going to be my question because we don't have an action log, I have no way of asking whether that action has been pursued or not.
Yeah, but it needs to be council-wide, so I'm chasing that up.
Right.
As to where we've got with it. I will report back when I've got an answer.
Do you have a time scale for that, Chair?
I'll report back when I've got an answer.
So no time scale? No. Okay. Thank you.
Right, so if there's nothing else on the minutes, we'll take into account Stephen's amendment and I'll sign those later on. It brings me on to Chairman's announcements, which means I can reduce my announcements from 3 to 2, because I've just answered Councillor Dupre's. What would bring my third announcement? So I have 2 announcements to make today. Can I please remind any members who haven't done so to complete their data protection training and also to return their related parties declaration, which is something our auditors have picked up on in previous years. And the second announcement is that EY, our external auditors, advised us on Friday that they are still working on their plan for 2025-26, and EY has therefore asked for item 6 to be deferred to the next meeting. And that concludes my announcements. Councillor Dupre, I don't usually take questions on announcements, but go on.
Sorry, does that mean you're not going to take my question on your announcements?
I said go on.
All right, okay, thank you. I have completed my related parties transaction form, but I did find it very clunky in that it's a Word document, I think, that you then have to download and fiddle around with, and if you've got the technology, you can fiddle around with it in a way that enables you to save it as a PDF and upload it and all the rest of that stuff. The other one I have done for the County Council is very much simpler, and it's an online form that you can very simply just sign off. And I would have thought that if the process were simplified, then you might get a better uptake.
Right, can we take that up outside the meeting? Because
We will take it on.
and perhaps if somebody could look at what other people, how other people do it, because yeah, I know what you mean. I had to download it and then decide which bit I was signing. And as it happens, if anybody's interested, I have a nil return. Right, that brings us on to agenda item 6, and I refer committee to my earlier announcement about the plan, external audit plan for 2025-26. So agenda item 7, internal audit work plan for 2026-27, and can I ask Rachel Ashley-Corn to introduce this item? Thanks, Rachel.
Thank you, Chair. So I brought a paper to this committee in October last year setting out the process that we would be following to develop your internal audit plan for the new financial year. So we have now been through that process, and at the end of that I have now compiled for you the draft internal audit plan for the new financial year, which is set out for you within the appendix from page 18 of your pack today. So within here I've tried to set out each of the audit assignments, the assurance that we would be seeking in relation to each of those, the number of days assigned, cross-reference to your strategic risk register, and your corporate objectives, and an indication of when we look to start each audit. So I don't intend to go through these line by line, but I'd be more than happy to take questions from the committee on any areas that you'd like further information on, or the reason for inclusion. We've also included for you on page 21 a reserve list of areas that have come out of that audit planning process, which haven't quite made the cut onto the audit plan either because they're lower risk in terms of their scoring, or other sources of assurance that are available, but this is something that we can revisit throughout the year as we need to, should anything change in terms of the risk profile. So I'm happy to take questions, Chair, on any of the content within the plan or the development of it. If approved today in line with the public sector and global internal audit standards, we will then adopt this as our programme of work from the 1st of April, tomorrow, and we will obviously report back to this committee as those audits are completed. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Rachel. Before we move to questions, can I have a proposer and seconder for the recommendations as set out in 2.1 and 2.2 of the report?
Thank you, Chair. Propose the recommendations as written.
Thank you, Councillor Vellicott. Do I have a seconder?
Happy to second, Chair.
Councillor Horgan. Members, comments or questions to Rachel to start with? Stephen? Stephen?
Okay. Thank you. This feels like a well put together plan covering the right things in the right way. I've got 3 things I'd just like to quickly ask about. Shall I ask all 3 at once? And, yeah. So on cybersecurity, you mentioned potential coverage on third parties. I wonder if you could explain what that means in practice in a little bit more detail. Secondly, on the Revs and Bens partnership, there's 35 days allocated to this, and of course it's very material financial sums involved. There are multiple councils involved in ARP, and could you explain to what extent the internal audit teams of the multiple councils coordinate their work so that the same things aren't being audited multiple times, and perhaps you can get assurance from others? And finally, on budgetary control, the statement of accounts we've just reviewed is a further year in which very material revenue and capital underspends arose in the millions. I think that happens, I think, almost every year that I've seen. Could the budgetary control audit get to the bottom of why we are seeing very material revenue and capital underspends? Thank you.
Rachel, would you like to comment on those before we move on?
Thank you, Chair. So just working through each of those. So in terms of cybersecurity, so when we talk about third parties, this is about the supply chain. So making sure that we're not just looking at our own systems and network, but we've also considered anything within our supply chain and how that could potentially put us at risk as well. So it's one of the areas that we've been asked to look at most of the local authorities we work with next year as one of the key areas of cybersecurity risk. So that's something that we'll be factoring in. Depending on the outcome of that, it may be something we need to report in private session because of the sensitive nature of that particular audit, but obviously we'll review that as needed. In terms of the revenues and benefits partnership, so yes, this is delivered as a joint piece of work. So we are a customer in relation to this. We don't deliver any of the revenues and benefits services, whereas some of the other local authorities, so West Suffolk, I won't list all of them, I think Fenland, a few of the others, they do some of the services and they deliver the audits as well. So I meet with them as a group once a year to agree the audit coverage for that financial year and the areas of risk they'll be focusing on. And then that's delivered as a joint project, as a shared service approach. So that is coordinated through that approach. The budgetary control audit, yes, we can look at underspends in the same way we would look at overspends as to how soon are they being forecast, are we foreseeing them, are we accounting for that appropriately? So yes, we can certainly take that on board.
Thank you. Can I just quickly come back? So on the cybersecurity audits of supply chain, so do our contracts with suppliers give us the right of access to do that audit? See what I mean? Because they might say, you know, it's none of your business, you know. So do our contracts give us that right of access? And on the budgetary control thing, thank you. But I don't think it's necessarily about reporting of variances. There must be something wrong with the budget to have significant material underspends in both revenue and capital year in, year out. And it's the thing that bothers me the most about the accounts, frankly. So if you are doing an audit of budgetary control, it feels to me that's something that should be definitely in scope.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Yes, so with the third party, so we wouldn't actually be doing any testing of their arrangements. It's more about what assurances do we get. So do we get evidence of accreditations, for example? What evidence do we request on an annual rolling basis during those contracts, I think. So rather than us having any rights of access as such. Budgetary control, yes, I can take that on board. We would usually be looking at areas of pressure, but if we are looking at areas where we're having recurring underspends again, that's a trend and something that we can look at as well.
Got it. Thank you. From the Chair, I think that needs to be highlighted to the Finance and Assets Committee. At the end of the day, they're responsible for setting the budget, so if you do find anything, we'll feed it in that way. Councillor Horgan?
Just one question, Chair. Is there anything materially different in this plan compared to previous years?
Through you, Chair. So in terms of the number of days, it is consistent, so it's the same size audit plan. The audit content will vary every year because it is a risk-based approach, so we'll always be looking at different things year in, year out. So within the plan that I've brought to you today, some of them are revisiting areas we've looked at previously. So for example, the enforcement policy compliance is something we audited in 22-23. So this is a revisit to make sure that things have improved in the areas that we highlighted. Some of them we haven't visited in the last few years. So customer services, for example, is something that we haven't undertaken any audit work on for a number of years. So those will always vary, and that is a healthy internal audit plan that changes. I suppose one thing that the committee might note in terms of the financial system key controls coverage, I have not included a payroll audit. Now, this is the first time not since I've been working with East Cambridgeshire that we haven't had a payroll audit. It's been one of those that we have for every financial system audit every year. And that is quite unusual nowadays because we would expect them to be fairly robust systems. And if they are receiving a good level of assurance, we shouldn't need to audit them every year if nothing's changing. So to try and adopt that slightly more risk-based approach, I have suggested, given your payroll has received substantial assurance on both control and design and compliance this year, I've proposed we don't do that next year, and that's freed up some days for us to do some riskier audits within the plan. So other than that, it's the same approach, but with the usual mix of audit coverage.
Councillor Bellicott.
Rachel, thank you. Brilliant report. Just wanted to query about the reserve list. If you get to a position where you've not used all of the audit days and you're looking to go down into the reserve list, is that written in priority order, or is that something you'd maybe at the time take stock of and see, okay, which is the most risky or the most pressing issue out of the reserve list that we'd want to spend that day on?
Through you, Chair. Yes, so it's something that we would revisit. So I'd probably speak to the management team and say, are any of these now a higher priority than they were at the time? It also depends on how many days we have available. So it might be that we could do, say, an audit on health and wellbeing strategy, but we wouldn't have enough days for a community safety audit, for example. So it's something that we would revisit. It may be that something changes and one of these needs to be prioritised. Then we would obviously need to take something else off the audit plan to facilitate that, but that's something that we'll keep under review, and that's one of the reasons that we do have the additional recommendation in the report as well, to enable us to make any changes in year if we need to, under the second recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Right, members, if nothing else, we've had a proposal and seconder. I turn to recommendations. All in favour? Thank you. That brings us on to agenda item number 8 and part 2 of the Rachel Harris report show, internal audit progress report. Over to you, please, Rachel.
Thank you, Chair. So my second report this evening is the latest update on the delivery of the 25-26 internal audit plan. So since the last committee report, we have finalised a further 3 reports from this year's plan. So the outcome of those has been included for you in Table 1 from page 30 of your papers, page 6 of the appendix. So all of these have received a good assurance opinion or above, so there are no significant areas of weakness to identify for the committee. We do remain on track to deliver your audit plan and ensure that everything is finalised in time for your annual report and annual governance statement. At the time of producing this report, we still had 3 audits that were not fully finalised. All of those are in progress or now complete, and you will obviously receive the outcomes of all of those at the next committee meeting. So as usual, I have provided you with a brief summary of each of the finalised audits during the period in section 2 from page 26 of your pack, page 2 of the appendix. So just briefly running through each of those. As I mentioned under the last report, the first was in relation to your payroll system and processes. So this was looking at both your policies and procedures, but also conducting sample testing around new starters and leavers and looking at your payment processes. So all of the controls that we tested or reviewed were found to be robust. We didn't identify any errors or reasons for concern. There were checks built into the processes as we would expect, and reconciliations were being completed in a timely manner to give us reassurance over the accuracy of the information. So overall, we have given a substantial assurance opinion, which is our highest assurance opinion for both the control environment and the compliance, and a low organisational impact as a result. The next related to staff support and engagement. So this was an audit that we included actually following a discussion at this committee, particularly in light of the local government reorganisation implications for staff. So as part of this, we were looking at communication support, advice, and support for anxiety and mental health, for example, absence arrangements, and how we're supporting staff through this period of change. So we're really pleased with the evidence that we found in terms of the staff support and engagement plan, which has a number of milestones and activities set out up until April 2028. There had been evidence of a range of different activities so far, including communications and support via a number of different channels and mechanisms, making that accessible to a range of staff. We were also pleased to see that feedback mechanisms had been built in as well, so it was a bit of a two-way process, so we were getting feedback from staff as well, and there was channels for them to contact management with any questions or concerns in this area. We did look at absence information and turnover as well, and there was no evidence on the data that was available that there's been any increase in these areas in relation to local government reorganisation. There are exit surveys which are conducted as part of the lever process, which would help give us insight into any implications arising from this. We have made a recommendation that there be further root cause analysis around things like absence and exits around LGR uncertainty in case that does become a theme going forward. But at the time of the audit, we were not seeing any evidence that had been a factor. There was a range of different support available for staff as well, both for mental health support, anxiety, change management, etc., to support through this period. So based on the evidence that we'd seen, we have given a good level of assurance for the control environment and the compliance and a low organisational impact. And the last related to the governance of trading companies. So this is something we look at regularly in different shapes and forms to look at different areas. What we tend to do is benchmark against the latest SIPFA guidance on local authority-owned companies to try and ensure we're aligned with best practice. So this time we were focusing on areas including risk management, performance management, and contract governance. We also looked at the TECL compliance for ECSS and were satisfied that that was well within the range that it needed to be, and reperformed the data on that. One of the improvements that we had seen since the last audit was the introduction of annual governance statements for the companies, which gave us a good source of assurance to collate all of the information around achievements and outcomes, and anything to highlight in terms of assurances, which should provide a good source of assurance for the Council's own annual governance statement as well. We were able to see good inclusion of KPIs and regular reporting on the performance of the different arrangements. We have made some recommendations to further strengthen arrangements in a couple of areas, particularly around risk management. So we would like to see a more formalised, documented process that shows how any risks that are being highlighted by the companies are being flagged to the corporate risk group at the council, to ensure there's a formalised process for this. And also to ensure that the companies are flagging any emerging risks as well as part of their reports, so that gives us a little bit more insight as an organisation as well. And in terms of formalising procurement rules for the companies in line with the SIPFA guidance as well. So overall, we have given a good level of assurance for the control environment and the compliance, and a low organisational impact from the findings. So finally, within the report, we also have an update on the implementation of audit actions on page 33. There have actually been no actions implemented since the last committee meeting, but there are only two which are overdue. One is the action which has been reported to the last few meetings of the committee around the timely production of contract documentation, which still remains in the over 3 months overdue category. The other is a low priority action, which is under 3 months overdue, and related to an action from the asset management audit, where the meeting due to conclude this was scheduled for February. It has now been reorganised. We expect that to be completed imminently, and which will then conclude that action. So I'm happy to take questions, Chair, on any of the detail within the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. From the Chair, I'm happy to propose a recommendation as set out in 2.1 of the report, that we note the progress made. Do I have a seconder?
Happy to second, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Horgan. Members, any comments or questions to Rachel? Stephen.
Thank you. Thank you for a very good and clear report, and it feels like progress against the audit plan has been really good, so well done to you and the team. Concerned that the overdue recommendation is still overdue. As you said, it's been reported a few times now, and I think, Chair, we should request that the responsible officer for this explains when this is going to be done, because this is important, and I think the audit committee needs to support the audit process by requiring that accountability. So I'd like to suggest that.
Happy to take on that suggestion.
Just generally, I welcome the findings that you're setting out in all three areas, but especially the staff support and engagement one, because not only what you found in terms of control arrangements, but also the lack of evidence that LGR was causing any sort of ripples in the workforce, and I think that's reassuring to see. My question, finally, is within the trading company's audits, you've looked at TECL compliance. In 30 seconds, could you just explain what is TECL compliance and what are TECL requirements? I've never heard of it.
Rachel.
Thank you, Chair. So under the TECL arrangements, if it is a wholly owned company through the council, as long as they are, and I just need to look up the percentage, so at least 80% of their business must come from the local authority. If it was to reduce below that, we would then need to go through a competitive process to award any work to that company. So we were satisfied that in the figures that were provided, 99% of the business was from East Cambridgeshire District Council, which means that we remain TECL compliant in terms of those arrangements.
Yeah, I think that there's also a second requirement, isn't there, around how the company is run. It's not, there are two conditions, one of which is the 80-20, and the other one is how the business is run. Is that correct?
I believe so. I'd need to check on that. I know certainly from the percentage I've got those figures to hand, but I believe there is. Yeah.
Perhaps we could just confirm that in writing to all members of the committee. That solve that. Any further questions to Rachel on this item? If not, we have a proposal and seconder. We go to the vote. All those in favour of noting the progress? Thank you. Brings us on to round 3. Sorry about this, Rachel, of the Rachel Ashley Court show. Internal audit, charter and mandate. Rachel, over to you to introduce, please.
Thank you, Chair. My last report for you today is the Internal Audit Charter and Mandate. So this comes to the Audit Committee on an annual basis for review and approval in line with the Global Internal Audit Standards. This document essentially sets out our rights of access to conduct the internal audit work. So it sets out our mandate under the relevant legislation and requirements under the standards. It also sets out our relationship with the organisation and how we maintain our independence in conducting our audit work. So this document was fully reviewed and aligned with the Global Internal Audit Standards in 2025. I am not proposing any amendments to the document for this year on the basis that it was fit for purpose and aligns with the latest guidance. But it is still coming to you as a committee for your formal review and approval to ensure you remain happy with the document as well. But if signed off again today, that will form the basis on which we will deliver the audit plan that you have also approved today. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Rachel. Again, from the Chair, I'm happy to propose the recommendation as set out in 2.1 of the report. Do I have a seconder?
Thank you, Chair. I'll second and reserve my right.
Thank you, Councillor Ellicott. Members, any further comments or questions to Rachel on this one? Councillor Lay.
Thank you, Chair. Excuse me, my voice is going. Simple question. Is this a fixed price contract between the council and yourself, or are there any variations on what we are proposing to pay you for your good work over the next year?
Rachel.
Thank you, through you, Chair. So we don't actually have a contract, it is a delegation. So under the relevant legal arrangements, the council has delegated delivery of its internal audit service to North Northamptonshire Council, for whom I'm employed. So that is on a cost recovery basis rather than a fixed price amount. So you commission a certain number of days, and that's based on that figure. So we have a partnership and delegation agreement in place, and that's the basis upon which we deliver your audit plan. So that increases in line, because essentially all of our costs are staffing. That does increase in line with the National Pay Award each year, because that obviously reflects any increase that we incur on our costs as well.
Thank you, Rachel. Very clear. Stephen.
Thank you. Yeah, all good and clear, and it is what it is, relatively straightforward. On page 42, the role of the Audit Committee is set out. And I'm reminded that some time ago we did some self-assessment workshop with you, Rachel, which identified some improvements that were needed. And I wondered if we could have an update on whether those improvements have been made and what still needs to be done. I don't mean now, this minute, but maybe at the next meeting we could have an update on that.
Which brings us, actually we sort of jumpstart them, because I've got that on the forward agenda plan to discuss, because we're going to do the annual report at July, so I want to see if members want to do a self-assessment, including update on before that meeting. So could we sort that at that point? Because then we'll ask for dates and such like. Thank you. Anything further? Councillor Horgan?
Same question again as previously, Chair. Any material differences between this one and any previous ones?
So,
Through you, Chair. No, there are no amendments to the document from the version that was approved by the committee last April.
right, members, are we all in favour of approving the internal audit charter and mandate? Please show. Unanimous again. Brings us on to agenda item 10. The response to external audit recommendations. An update from Jude, please.
Thank you, Chair. This paper sets out the actions taken in response to the 8 recommendations issued by the external auditors following the 24-25 audit. Since the report was published, there has been one correction to point 4.1. The principal accountant start date has changed from 23rd March to 31st March. The committee is asked to note the recommendation and the action that have been taken. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we move on to questions, etc., can I have a proposer and second if the recommendation is set out in point 2 of the report?
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to propose that as written.
Thank you. Councillor Bellicott, and a seconder.
Happy to second, Chair. Is that all right?
Thank you, Councillor Horgan. Members, comments, questions to Jude on this report, please. Steve?
Thank you. I think this is a very helpful and reassuring report, and sort of well done for the action you've already taken, which is clearly significant. So I think that's very, very reassuring. Can you explain a bit more about your plans with the interim technical accountant and the new principal accountant? Is one replacing the other? Will you be having both of them for a while? What are your plans for maybe phasing out the interim accountant and ensuring that we retain the skills that person is bringing?
Through you, Chair. Thank you. The plan is to for the technical accountant to transfer his knowledge to the new principal accountant, and for the team as well to keep his bring his knowledge to improve team's technical skills. Once the principal accountant is settled in a role, and then that will discontinue the technical accountant's the role. Thank you, Chair.
Do we have any kind of time scale for that, or is it a case of how it goes?
Currently, I'm looking around to end the contract by June once the accounts are published. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. If I may come back, I mean, that sounds like a good plan to me, and I wish you well. I hope that all works out fine. And assuming it does, and that knowledge transfer happens, and your principal accountant works out and passes their probation, etc., do you consider you will have sufficient capability and capacity within the finance team, or do you think further investment will be needed in the future?
Jude?
Thank you, Chair. Looking at the finance team structure, I believe it will be sufficient to carry out, and once the skills are acquired from this technical accountant, I'm hoping and believe that will be sufficient. So we may not require any further resource. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Further, Councillor Horgan?
Thank you, Chair. I may beg your indulgence. I do actually have 5 questions for Jude, but I will ask them one at a time so that he can answer rather than ask him to remember them, as they are all on different parts of the paper. On page 52, 4.1, the final bullet point at the top of the page, I've read what's written there several times, and I didn't quite understand how you can request from EY working papers and then they're suddenly acceptable to them. I wasn't sure how the mechanism worked. So is it a matter of grammar in that bullet point, or am I missing something? Could you just help me understand how these sample working papers have been used? And
through you, Chair. As you will remember from the audit report, the auditors mentioned the quality of the working papers which we produce weren't the acceptable level to them. So on that point, I went back to them and said, just give me one example so that we can use that as an example to produce the working papers which is acceptable for them for the next financial year. So for that, I haven't had any response so far from EY. So we may have to use existing work paper if they don't provide any. I mean, I'm speaking to my colleagues from other council as well. I mean, they all had the same kind of feedback from EY for this last year. So it's kind of it's the same thing they have been telling all the council. And probably you may remember they said they raised the bar last year to achieve the qualified, the clean audit for the near future. So that's probably why they keep preferring this working paper, quality of the working paper. Thank you.
I'll continue, Chair. Thank you for that, Jude. So just to sort of check my understanding is you've requested examples of working papers and you're still waiting for them to arrive. Thank you. Then I move on to 4.3, the final bullet point again. Can we understand who will conduct the enhanced internal review, please? Is that an internal function, external function? Is it our internal auditors? Who actually does that, please?
Through you, Chair, again. That recommendation refers to the group account between the trading company and our council's accounts. So what I have set up now is to reconcile the accounts, the numbers between two books, between the trading company and our books before it goes to the final accounts. So as part of the consolidation of the accounts, the technical accountant and the principal accountant, both of them will review the accounts, approve the numbers, along with the trading company's finance manager, so that the numbers we produce as well as they produce are the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Jude. Excellent. Good that we're checking the checkers. Moving on to 4.4, the final paragraph. Can we receive assurance that this will be enough to address the issue that the recommendation highlighted, i.e. what has actually changed as a result of EY's recommendation?
Through you, Chair. The last year, what they picked up was we're not keeping record of all the Section 106 and SIL payments that we received. For that, we didn't produce any report, or we haven't given any report to them from the system we have. To answer your question directly, and we have a system in place. We use it to record all the Section 106 and SIL payment which we received. That was not given to the auditors last year. So I believe that should be sufficient for this year. If not, we will work with them to produce what they want to satisfy their requirement. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you on that.
Just following on from that, as we're all fully aware, we do get reports on how much money we've had in 106 and SIL payments, indeed broken down by parish. So, yeah. Hopefully that will satisfy the auditors, and as Jude says, if it doesn't satisfy the external auditors, we'll work with them to make sure they get something that does satisfy them. Right, sorry, Councillor Organ, you had...
That's all right. My last question is on 4.7, the first bullet point. Have any changes to the classification of cash and investments been made as a result of the review?
Through you, Chair. Last year, we had two investments that were more than, they were invested for 6 months. So that was the issue, because that, so at the year end, it only had 3 months to mature. So we classified them as a short-term investment, which they disagreed with it. They said because the inception, it was a 6-month investment, so they wanted us to classify as a long-term investment. For this financial year, all our investment were under 3 months. So I don't think that will be an issue for this year. So it will be addressed. Yeah.
Excellent, thank you, Jude. So right things in the right box.
Thank you. Thank you. Members, any further questions to Jude on this report? Councillor Dupre?
Thank you, Chair. A question for you, if I may. Given the dire audit that we had, that we considered at the last meeting, and given the work that has been done since against the 8 recommendations, what are your expectations for the ratings that we will see next year when we receive our report next year? What is your ambition for next year's?
Well, I certainly do not expect to get the comments from external auditors that we got this year. Clearly, as external auditors have explained, I doubt whether I can't see that we're going to get a complete clean sign-off because of the issue around opening balances, but I would certainly anticipate that external audit will be giving us a much better review of working papers, relationships, and everything that goes towards it. And that is my ambition. Stephen?
If I may comment, though, that I think a disclaimed opinion is still the inevitable outcome of the forthcoming audits.
Yes.
I think we understand that, yes. But otherwise concur, yeah.
Anything further on this one? If not, can we all agree to note the recommendations and the actions taken? Unanimous again, Patrick. That brings us on to the forward agenda plan. Before I look at anything else, Rachel, you and I have discussed this idea of a self-assessment because we're going to do the annual report for, complete that off at the July meeting, so we're looking at the full financial year. And we talked about rerunning the self-assessment exercise. Would you like to comment?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm happy to facilitate a session again with committee members to run through the self-assessment. I think it does, you will need to revisit the action plan from last time, and I think some of those actions perhaps haven't progressed forward yet, so it's something that we'll need to look at. But certainly I think it's worth reflecting on a full financial year now that you can look back and see how you assessed yourselves against each of the criteria. So I can circulate the template in advance of any session. If you would like to do that in person, I'm more than happy to facilitate that, or if it makes it easier to do it online, I'm more than happy either way, but I'm happy to help you with it if you'd like me to.
Thank you, Rachel. From the chair, I would have to say I would prefer, if we can get a date in April, May time, that we do it face-to-face as a group. But if other people feel it would be better just done online, that's fine by me. That's what I'd like the committee to give a view on, please. Councillor Bellicott.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like us to get around the table if we can, maybe just in one of the committee rooms, and provided we can find a date that Rachel's available as well, I think that's probably the most important thing. But yes, I think ideally in good time before the publication of the reports for July would be nice.
Any other views?
Chair, I concur with that view.
Thank you. I'm not hearing any voices disagreeing, so Rachel, could you circulate some suggested dates and times?
Yes, I'm happy to. Perhaps you, Patrick, if I could try to arrange a date, that'd be fine with me.
Thank you. Do we have anything further on the forward agenda plan? If not, I declare the meeting closed. Thank you everybody for your participation.